Have you ever ridden through a road so quiet that the silence itself feels alive? In Aceh, there's a lane whispered about by locals, a stretch of asphalt swallowed by fog and shadows. They call it Kat Panglima. On maps, it looks ordinary, just another road cutting through the forest. But ask anyone who's crossed it after midnight, and their voice will drop, their eyes shifting, as though the lane itself might overhear. Some say the trees there bend too close, as if listening. Others swear they've heard whispers in their helmets, voices of friends long dead, or seen figures standing beneath the crooked tree that marks the bend. And the worst part, once you step into Kat Panglima, you can't be sure the road will let you leave. This is the story of June, a young man who thought it was just another late-night ride. He was wrong. If you've ever been to Aceh, you'll know that the roads there have a character of their own. Some are beautiful, lined with shady trees. Some are lively, with coffee stalls on either side. But then, there are roads that send chills down your spine, even when the sun is still up. One of those is the road people call Kat Panglima. The name itself carries a certain weight, as if history clings tightly to the soil beneath it. Kat Panglima isn't a long, smooth, asphalt road meant for travelers going far. It's more of an alternative path, a shortcut, linking one village to another. Logically, it should be busy with locals. But in reality, whenever you pass through it, you can't shake the feeling that you've entered a realm not meant for humans. The road is narrow, barely wide enough for a small car to squeeze through. On either side, tall trees loom above. There are acacias, war trees, and most striking of all, a massive tree standing right at a bend. That tree isn't just any tree. Its roots crawl out into the road, and its trunk is so wide that no adult could wrap their arms around it. Locals say it has stood there since the Dutch colonial days. For generations, no one has ever dared to cut it down. The reason? People believe that's where the guardian lives. A spirit bound to Kat Panglima for as long as anyone can remember. The villagers say anyone foolish enough to cut it, or even disturb it, will meet a curse, sudden illness, a crash on the road, or worse, disappearance without a trace. If you take Kat Panglima during the day, all you might notice is the humid heat and the earthy smell of damp ground. But once night falls, everything changes. The road feels abandoned, almost deliberately deserted by people. Streetlights? Forget it. The only light is from your own vehicle, slicing through the thick mist that seems to appear out of nowhere. A few locals living nearby have warned, if you pass through there at night, never look back. Keep your eyes forward. And if you see someone waving by the roadside, don't stop. Because what you see might not be human. And strangely enough, despite all the stories, some people still choose to take that road. Maybe they're in a hurry. Maybe they're curious. Or maybe they just don't believe in the old tales whispered from one generation to the next. Until one night, a motorcycle taxi driver became a living witness that the legends of Kat Panglima are not just stories. His name was Junaidi, though most people just called him June. He was known in the village as a tough guy, the kind who wasn't easily spooked. Driving his motorbike late at night was nothing new. He had been working as an ojek driver for years, ferrying passengers from one small town to another. Night shifts meant good money, and June wasn't the type to turn down a fare, no matter the time. One Thursday night, just past midnight, June received a call from a regular customer who needed to be picked up from the main road and dropped off at a village that could only be reached through Kat Panglima. For June, that shortcut would save almost 20 minutes of riding. The longer way around would mean more fuel, more time, and less profit. He shrugged off the old stories about the haunted road. After all, he had passed through there a few times in the day, and nothing had ever happened. Nighttime couldn't be that different. At least, that's what he thought. The night air was heavy with mist when June turned onto Kat Panglima. His motorbike's headlight carved a thin path through the darkness, but the world beyond the beam was swallowed by shadows. The road was so quiet that even the faint buzzing of cicadas seemed unnaturally loud. Every turn of the tires against the gravel echoed in the silence, and June couldn't help but notice how each sound felt sharper, as if the darkness itself was listening. As he reached the large tree in the middle of the bend, June instinctively slowed down. His grandmother used to tell him, never honk when you pass the old tree, never spit, never curse. He wasn't superstitious, but something about the way the branches twisted against the night sky made his chest tighten. The roots that bulged into the road looked like pale, gnarled fingers reaching out, trying to catch his tires. June gripped the handlebars tighter, accelerating just a bit to shake off the unease. Then it happened. In the glow of his headlight, just ahead, he saw her. A woman standing at the side of the road. She wore a long white hijab that fluttered slightly in the night breeze, her face hidden by the shadows. June's first thought was simple, a passenger. Someone who needed a ride home. He pulled up beside her, trying to sound casual. "Where to back?" he asked, voice steady, though his gut twisted. The woman didn't answer. She just turned her head slowly toward him, though her features were still veiled by darkness. After a long silence, she moved closer and, without a word, climbed onto the back of his motorbike. Her touch was cold, so cold that June felt the chill seeping through his jacket. He swallowed hard, but forced himself to start the engine again. The road stretched ahead, quiet and endless. June tried to calm himself, convincing his mind that this was just another passenger, nothing more. But then, as the bike rolled past the massive tree, the strange weight behind him vanished. At first, June thought maybe she had shifted her weight, or maybe she had leaned too far to one side. But as he glanced quickly over his shoulder, his blood ran cold. The seat behind him was empty. His motorbike wobbled slightly as panic shot through his body. He steadied the handlebars, heart pounding so hard it echoed in his ears. He hadn't heard her jump off. He hadn't felt the bike lighten. 1 second she was there, her cold presence pressing against his back, and the next she was gone. June slowed down, bringing the bike to a cautious stop. The silence around him felt heavier than before, pressing in from every direction. The mist thickened, swirling like ghostly fingers curling around the beam of his headlight. He turned his head toward the massive tree, its bark dark and wet from the night air. The roots seemed to shift in the shadows, as though they were alive. A voice whispered. It was so faint, June wasn't sure if he heard it with his ears or inside his skull. "Don't look back." His grandmother's warning rang clear in his memory, the exact words she used to say. June's throat tightened, but curiosity, it was stronger than fear. Against every instinct screaming inside him, he twisted on the bike's seat and looked behind. The road was empty. No sign of the woman. No footprints on the damp ground. Just fog stretching endlessly, swallowing the path. June forced out a shaky laugh, trying to convince himself. Maybe she got off, maybe I just didn't notice. His voice trembled, sounding strange and hollow in the silence. But then, just as he prepared to move on, he caught sight of something in his rearview mirror. A shadow. A figure. Sitting calmly on the back of his motorbike. June froze, too afraid to turn around. His hands trembled against the handlebars, the engine idling as if waiting for his decision. Sweat trickled down his temple despite the chill night air. The figure in the mirror leaned closer. Slowly. Inch by inch. And though her face was still hidden, June could feel her breath cold against his ear. That was when he realized she had never left. June's stomach twisted as icy breath grazed the side of his neck. His body screamed at him to get away, to hit the throttle and never stop until he was out of Koh Panglima. But he couldn't move. His muscles felt locked, as if invisible hands were holding him in place. He forced himself to breathe. 1, 2, 3. The sound of his heartbeat almost drowned out the motor's idle rumble. Then, without warning, a faint laugh rippled through the air. High-pitched, broken, and coming from directly behind him. June squeezed his eyes shut. He wanted to believe it was his imagination, some cruel trick of the night. But the laughter grew louder, warping into a shrill cry that stabbed through his skull. And then silence. When June finally dared to open his eyes, his mirror no longer showed the pale figure sitting behind him. The seat was empty again. His trembling hand shot forward, twisting the throttle. The bike roared, tires skidding slightly on the damp road as he sped forward into the fog. But Koh Panglima wasn't done with him. The mist grew thicker the faster he rode, swallowing the headlight's beam until it lit barely a meter ahead. The trees lining the road seemed to close in, their branches tangling overhead like skeletal arms. Every shadow seemed alive, reaching, shifting just beyond his vision. June's breath came fast and shallow. He whispered under his breath, a desperate prayer his mother used to recite before bed. Bismillah, Bismillah. The words trembled out of his mouth, but they were the only anchor he had in the choking darkness. Then, as he rounded another bend, June's stomach dropped. Standing in the middle of the road was the same woman in white. Her figure was clearer now, illuminated fully by the headlight. She wasn't just standing still, she was facing him, her arms hanging limply at her sides, head tilted at an unnatural angle. June slammed the brakes, tires screeching as the bike fishtailed, and stopped just meters away from her. His breath hitched. The woman's face was no longer hidden. It was pale, almost translucent, her eyes nothing but dark, hollow sockets. Her mouth stretched open wider than humanly possible, a black void spilling out mist that curled toward him. June's scream never made it out. His voice caught in his throat as the woman lifted one trembling hand and slowly, deliberately, pointed at the giant tree behind him. June's chest rose and fell rapidly, each breath sharp and uneven. The woman's finger remained fixed, pointing toward the enormous tree looming behind him. He didn't dare look. He knew deep down that if he turned, he wouldn't like what he saw. But then the wind shifted. A sour, earthy smell hit his nose, like damp soil mixed with something rotten. It was coming from the direction of the tree. June gagged, his stomach twisting, but he couldn't tear his gaze away from the woman's hollow face. Her arm shook violently as she continued pointing, as if something unseen was pulling her hand backward. Her jaw quivered, and then, in a voice that was both distant and piercing, she whispered, "Go back!" June's eyes widened. Go back? Back where? Back to the tree? Back the way he came? His mind scrambled for meaning. But before he could process the words, the woman's body jerked unnaturally. Her neck cracked with a sickening sound as her head twisted further to the side, until it seemed moments away from snapping off completely. June flinched, gripping the handlebars like a lifeline. His entire body screamed at him to flee. He twisted the throttle, the bike surging forward. The woman didn't move aside. She simply vanished as the headlight passed through her, dissolving into mist. For a brief moment, June thought he was safe. The road ahead stretched empty, silent. But the relief lasted only seconds. As he sped forward, he noticed something impossible. No matter how far he rode, the giant tree appeared again and again in front of him. The same crooked branches, the same sprawling roots, the same shadow that swallowed the bend. His throat went dry. He had already passed that tree twice, maybe 3 times. Was the road looping? June slowed down, chest tight with panic. He pulled the bike to the roadside and killed the engine. The silence that followed was suffocating. Even the insects had gone quiet. Only his ragged breathing filled the air. He glanced at his phone, hoping for signal. The screen glowed dimly in his hand, but the signal bars were gone. Just a blank void where the network should be. The mist thickened, curling around him like smoke. Then came the sound, a low guttural groan, deep and resonant, as if it came from the earth itself. The sound rolled through the trees, vibrating in his bones. June's eyes darted around, searching for the source. His instincts told him the noise came from the direction of the tree. And though every part of him wanted to stay seated, to avoid looking, his head turned almost on its own, toward the massive trunk waiting in the dark. The trunk loomed before him, its bark glistening as if wet, though no rain had fallen that night. June squinted through the mist, his pulse racing. At first, he thought the shifting patterns on the bark were just shadows playing tricks on his eyes. But then they moved, slowly, purposefully. Faces. Dozens of faces pressed into the surface of the tree, distorted, twisted in agony, mouths frozen in silent screams. Eyes bulged as though begging to be released. Some looked fresh, their features sharp and human. Others were worn down, blurred as though they had been there for centuries. June staggered backward, while rising in his throat. His mind refused to accept what he was seeing, yet he couldn't look away. Each face seemed to ripple, as though trapped just beneath the surface, trying to push through the bark. The groaning sound deepened, vibrating the ground under his feet. June's knees nearly buckled. He fumbled with the keys, trying to start the engine again, but his trembling fingers slipped. Then, among the countless twisted visages, one face stood out. He knew it. It was Raziad, his childhood friend who had vanished a year ago. People had said Raziad left the village to work in another town, but June had never believed it. Now here was his friend's face, unmistakable, eyes wide with terror, lips moving soundlessly as if trying to form words. June's mouth went dry. "Raziad," he whispered, voice barely audible. The face blinked. Once. Slowly. June stumbled backward, his hand tightening on the handlebar. His heart screamed at him to leave, to escape while he still could. But his body wouldn't obey. His gaze was locked with Raziad's, and in that moment, he understood the warning the woman in white had given him. "Go back." Before he could react, the bark split open with a sickening crack, and from the gap emerged a black, gnarled hand. Its fingers were long, jagged like broken branches, dripping with dark sap that smelled of rot. The hand clawed outward, curling toward June as the groan rose into a furious roar. June's survival instincts finally broke through. He jammed the key, the motorbike roaring to life with a sputter. Tires screeched against the damp gravel as he sped forward, his chest heaving. But no matter how fast he rode, he felt it. Something heavy, something unseen, latching onto the back of his bike. June's bike rattled beneath him as he pushed it to its limit, the engine screaming in protest. His body leaned low, eyes fixed on the thin beam of light ahead. But no matter how fast he went, the weight clinging to the back didn't budge. The seat creaked. He dared a glance into the rearview mirror. There it was again, the woman. Her white hijab whipped in the rushing wind, though her face was clearer now, skin pale as wax, lips curled into something between a smile and a grimace. Her hollow eyes bored into him, unblinking. June's chest tightened. He gritted his teeth and twisted the throttle harder. "Go! Go!" he shouted at the machine, as if sheer desperation could make it faster. The road blurred, trees streaking past in a dizzying rush. Still, the weight remained. He felt her fingers brush against his back, ice cold, like frozen steel against his spine. And then silence. The pressure lifted. The seat behind him was light again. He checked the mirror. Empty. Nothing but the fog swirling in the headlights' glow. June slowed, gasping for air. Sweat poured down his temples, soaking his shirt despite the night chill. His body trembled, exhausted from the panic that had gripped every muscle. For a moment, there was nothing. Just the soft hum of the motor, the gentle crunch of gravel under the tires, and the faint rustle of leaves in the night breeze. He dared to believe it was over. Maybe the spirit had let him go. Maybe he had outrun whatever haunted Kat Panglima. But hope was fragile. The mist parted briefly, revealing the road ahead. June's eyes widened in horror. There it was again. The same massive tree, its roots stretching across the ground like claws. And beneath it, standing perfectly still, the woman in white. Waiting. June's breath caught in his throat. He squeezed the brakes, skidding to a stop. His body shook violently. "No, no, no, no," he whispered. It wasn't just the tree repeating. It was the road itself. Kat Panglima wasn't letting him leave. June gripped the handlebars until his knuckles turned white. His mind spun in circles, trying to make sense of it. He had been riding straight. No turns, no detours. And yet here he was, back at the same cursed tree. The woman in white didn't move. She stood beneath the branches like a statue, her body perfectly rigid, as though she had been waiting for him all along. June's breath came in shallow bursts. He told himself to think, to stay calm. Maybe he had taken a wrong path. Maybe he had lost his bearings in the mist. But deep inside, a colder truth gnawed at him. Kat Panglima wasn't just a road. It was a trap. A whisper floated through the fog, curling around his ears like smoke. "Stay!" June whipped his head left and right, but there was no one there. Just shadows stretching between the trees, bending in shapes that weren't natural. His stomach clenched as he realized the sound hadn't come from outside. It had come from inside his helmet. His visor fogged up with each breath, the glass misting until he could barely see. He ripped it open, sucking in the damp, heavy air. The forest seemed to lean closer, every tree bending, every branch pointing toward him like accusing fingers. Then, in the corner of his eye, he saw movement. Raziad. There, just beyond the tree line, stood his friend. No longer trapped in the bark, but standing freely, waving at him. His face was pale but human, eyes wide with urgency. His lips moved quickly, forming words June couldn't hear. "Raziad?" June's voice cracked. He stumbled off the bike, legs weak as he staggered a few steps forward. "Is it really you?" The figure nodded furiously, beckoning him closer. For a heartbeat, hope surged in June's chest. Maybe this nightmare had a way out. Maybe his friend had found the escape. But as he drew nearer, the figure's movements became jerky, unnatural. The head tilted too far to one side. The smile stretched too wide, teeth too sharp. June froze. His blood ran cold. That wasn't Raziad. It was wearing his friend's face like a mask. The figure's mouth opened, wider and wider, until it tore into a black void. From its throat spilled the same guttural groan as the tree, louder now, vibrating through the night. June stumbled back toward his bike, terror clawing at his chest. He realized then, Kat Panglima wasn't just showing him ghosts. It was playing with. June slammed himself back onto the bike, hands trembling as he fumbled for the ignition. The engine roared to life, but the sound felt wrong, hollow, like it was echoing from somewhere deep underground. He didn't care. He twisted the throttle, the tires spitting gravel as he surged forward into the fog. His heart pounded against his ribs, urging him to go faster, faster, just outrun this nightmare. The lane seemed endless, a tunnel of mist and crooked trees. Branches clawed at his jacket, scraping his helmet. He leaned low, pushing the bike harder than he ever had. Then light. A warm glow flickered ahead, cutting through the haze. Relief exploded in his chest. A warung. A roadside stall. He saw figures moving inside, the soft chatter of voices drifting out. Civilization. Salvation. Thank God, June whispered. He skidded to a stop, gravel crunching under the wheels, and pulled off his helmet. The night air wrapped around him, thick and damp. He took a shaky breath and stumbled toward the stall. But as he drew closer, the voices warped. Laughter, but wrong, too sharp, too jagged. The figures inside weren't eating. They weren't even sitting like normal people. They were hunched, twisted, their limbs bent at impossible angles, jerking with every laugh. The smell hit him next, rot, like meat left in the sun for weeks. June gagged, covering his mouth. He blinked, trying to steady his vision. And in that blink, the stall was gone. The glow, the figures, the voices, all swallowed by the mist. He stood alone in the dark lane, helmet dangling from his hand, silence pressing in on him like a weight. His pulse hammered in his ears. No, 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 no. He spun back toward his bike. It wasn't there. The road behind him was empty, only fog and the faint outline of the cursed tree where it had all begun. The tree with something still writhing in its bark. June's knees nearly buckled. He couldn't run forward. He couldn't go back. He was trapped in a loop, each step dragging him deeper into Kot Panglima's grip. Then the whisper returned, softer this time, curling like a lover's breath at his ear. Stay! This time, June didn't move. He couldn't. His body refused to obey, as though invisible hands were holding him in place. His breath hitched, his skin crawling as a shadow stretched across the road in front of him, long, thin, and slowly growing taller. Something was coming. The shadow stretched across the road, impossibly long, as if the source stood just beyond the reach of the mist. June's throat went dry. He couldn't see the figure itself, only the darkness it cast, swaying slightly as though breathing. Then slowly something emerged. At first it looked human, tall, thin, draped in white cloth that shimmered faintly in the moonlight. But the longer June stared, the less human it became. Its head lolled to one side, hair spilling forward like a curtain of black. The arms were too long, dangling past its knees, fingers dragging along the gravel as it stepped closer. June's legs shook. He wanted to scream, but the sound lodged in his chest. The whisper that had haunted him now seemed to come from the figure itself, every word vibrating in his bones. Stay with me. It raised its head. For a heartbeat, June saw Raziad's face again, his best friend, smiling weakly, eyes glassy with pain. Hope stabbed through him, sharp and desperate. Raziad? His voice cracked. The figure twitched. The smile widened, splitting unnaturally from ear to ear. Skin peeled back as if the face were tearing itself apart, revealing the dark void beneath. The voice deepened, layered with countless others. Stay. June stumbled back, nearly tripping over his own feet. The fog thickened, swallowing the trees, the sky, even the ground beneath him. All that remained was the figure, looming, relentless, its shadow stretching to his toes. He turned to run, but his body felt sluggish, like he was moving through water. The figure, meanwhile, glided effortlessly, closing the distance without a sound. June's heart thundered. He could feel the presence at his back now, cold breath on his neck. He dared not look, but the whispers pressed harder, louder, overlapping voices echoing inside his skull. Stay forever. Something icy brushed his shoulder. Not a hand, something sharper like claws. That was enough. Survival instinct took over. With a strangled cry, June forced his body into motion, legs pumping as he bolted blindly through the fog. He didn't care where he ended up, as long as it was away from that thing. But deep down, a dreadful thought dug into him. On Kot Panglima, there was no away. June sprinted, lungs burning, each breath scraping his throat raw. His boots pounded the gravel, echoing in the silence like war drums. The fog tore at his face, thick and wet, stinging his eyes as he pushed himself harder. But the lane never changed. Every stride carried him past the same crooked trees, the same drooping branches, the same winding strip of road. No matter how far or how fast he ran, the scenery repeated itself like a broken reel of film. His chest tightened. Panic swelled inside him. He dared a glance over his shoulder, nothing but mist. The figure was gone, or hiding. He slowed for a second, ears straining. The silence was unbearable, heavy, as though the forest itself was holding its breath. Then crack. A twig snapped, loud and deliberate, just behind him. June's blood froze. He bolted again, faster, almost stumbling as his legs screamed in protest. The lane narrowed ahead, trees pressing closer together. Their branches arched overhead, knitting into a canopy that blotted out the sky. It felt less like a road now, and more like a tunnel. A trap! His vision blurred with exhaustion, and still he ran. His heartbeat thundered in his ears, mixing with something else, a faint rhythm that wasn't his own. A steady, deliberate thump, 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 following him, matching his pace. June risked another look back. Through the shifting fog, he saw it. The figure gliding effortlessly, its head still tilted, arms swaying like pendulums. It didn't run. It didn't need to. Each step it took seemed to pull the space between them shorter, as if the lane itself bent to its will. June cried out in frustration, the sound cracking in his throat. He tore through the mist, his body moving on raw terror alone. But no matter how much distance he thought he gained, the figure remained just as close, never lagging, never rushing, always there. His strength began to fail. His legs grew heavy, his breaths ragged. The tunnel of trees tightened until their branches scraped his shoulders, tearing at his jacket. Then abruptly the road ended. He skidded to a halt, gravel scattering at his feet. Before him yawned a black void where the lane should have continued, an endless drop into nothingness. No sound, no bottom, just a vast, empty abyss. June's heart lurched. Trapped between the thing behind him and the void before him, he realized there was no escape. The whisper returned, louder than ever, wrapping around him like chains. Stay! June's knees buckled as he stared into the abyss. The road ended in a clean break, as though the earth itself had been sliced open. The void stretched infinitely below, swallowing even the faintest trace of sound. His breath came in ragged bursts. Sweat slicked his palms, stinging the cuts on his skin. Behind him the thump, thump, thump drew closer, steady as a heartbeat. The whisper was so loud now it felt like it was vibrating inside his skull. Stay! He couldn't. He wouldn't. June's eyes darted left, then right. Nothing but trees. Dense, crooked, their trunks twisted like bodies in pain. They loomed so close that he doubted he could squeeze through, let alone run. The abyss beckoned in front of him, the figure loomed behind. His choices were death, or something worse. June gritted his teeth, forcing air into his lungs. No, I'm not staying here. He backed toward the edge, gravel crumbling under his boots, threatening to drop him into the blackness. His chest heaved as he whipped around, staring into the void. For a moment, the silence below almost felt comforting. Empty. Final. But then he saw it. A face. Dozens of them. Rising out of the darkness like pale lanterns, mouths frozen in screams, eyes wide with despair. They drifted upward, weightless, but never crossed the edge, as if chained within the abyss itself. Their voices hit him next, faint at first, then swelling into a deafening chorus. Don't jump, don't join us, don't. June staggered back, horrified. The abyss wasn't an escape. It was a prison. The whisper behind him surged louder, closer. Stay. June spun. The figure was only a few steps away now, its head jerking with unnatural snaps, hair whipping in the unseen wind. Its arms stretched out, impossibly long, fingers twitching with hunger. Trapped between the abyss of screaming faces and the figure's outstretched claws, June's mind cracked under the pressure. His body screamed at him to choose, but neither path promised freedom. His lips trembled. God help me! The ground shuddered beneath his feet. The trees groaned, their trunks bending inward like ribs of a cage, sealing him tighter within Kot Panglima's grasp. He realized the truth then, sharp and merciless. This lane wasn't just haunted. It was alive. The lane groaned around him, every tree shivering, their branches snapping like brittle bones. June's breath came in sharp, shallow bursts as he spun in place, searching for any gap, any sliver of escape. The abyss seethed behind him, faces rising and falling like waves, their cries scraping against his ears. The figure stood ahead, arms stretched, head twitching in spasms. And the trees, they leaned closer, their bark splitting to reveal pale shapes pressed within, as if dozens of bodies were trapped just beneath the surface. Raziad was one of them. June's stomach lurched. His friend's face stared back at him from inside a nearby trunk, eyes wet, lips mouthing his name soundlessly. He stumbled forward, hand outstretched, desperate to touch him, but the bark pulsed like flesh, veins dark and writhing beneath its surface. The wood rippled, Raziad's face sinking away, replaced by another, and another, faces June didn't recognize, but all of them twisted in the same silent scream. He yanked his hand back, gagging, while rising in his throat. Stay, the figure whispered again, closer now. Its voice crawled through his head, not just as sound but as thought, as if the lane itself were speaking through him. "You belong here." "No!" June roared, his voice cracking into a sob. He clutched his head, nails digging into his scalp. "I don't belong here. Let me out." The ground beneath him shifted. Gravel crumbled like ash, exposing roots that writhed and coiled like snakes. One shot upward, wrapping around his ankle. He screamed, thrashing, but more roots followed, curling around his legs, his waist, his wrists. The earth itself was dragging him down, pulling him into its hungry soil. June clawed at the ground, tearing his nails bloody as he tried to free himself. His helmet slipped from his grasp, rolling into the fog, lost forever. His breath came in panicked gasps as the roots pulled tighter, squeezing until his bones ached. The figure loomed over him now, its face inches from his own. Its mouth gaped open, wider and wider, revealing the same abyss that yawned behind him, lined with screaming faces. June's reflection trembled in that void, distorted, already fading. His mind fractured under the sight. He didn't know if he was screaming aloud anymore, or if the sound was only in his head. One thought repeated itself, a desperate mantra. Asterisk, wake up. Wake up. Wake up, asterisk. But Kot Panglima didn't let people wake up. It only kept them. June thrashed against the roots, every muscle screaming with effort. His body convulsed in the dirt, sweat and blood mixing with the soil as he fought to break free. For one fleeting second, he tore a hand loose and clawed at the ground, dragging himself forward by inches. But the lane was relentless. The roots surged tighter, twisting around his ribs until his breath came in shallow, wheezing gasps. Another wrapped across his chest like a strap, pinning him flat against the cold gravel. He felt the earth pulse beneath him, rhythmic and alive, as if he lay upon the chest of some vast, slumbering beast. "Stay," the whisper pressed, heavier than ever. It wasn't just a voice now. It was a command, a weight bearing down on his soul. June's vision blurred with tears. Images flickered in his mind, his family's laughter, the smell of his mother's cooking, the sound of the sea crashing against Banda Aceh's shore. Fragments of a life he had lived just hours ago, a life slipping further and further away. "No, I can't. I won't," his voice broke, rasping with exhaustion. Above him, the figure leaned closer, its face a shifting mask of those he loved. Raziad, his mother, even strangers, each morphing into the next, begging him to surrender. Its long fingers hovered just above his chest, twitching, ready to pierce. June's heart pounded wildly, not just with fear, but with defiance. Summoning the last of his strength, he spat through clenched teeth. "I'm not yours." For a moment, the whisper faltered. The fog thinned, just barely, revealing the faint shimmer of stars above. Hope flared in June's chest. He pushed harder, thrashing, screaming, tearing his skin raw against the roots. His body trembled on the edge of breaking, every nerve alight with agony. But for a second, he felt the grip loosen. The figure hissed, its smile collapsing into a jagged snarl. The lane shuddered violently, trees rattling, the abyss behind him roaring with the cries of countless voices. The world itself seemed to reject his defiance. June arched his back in pain, every tendon straining as the roots redoubled their grip. His scream ripped through the mist, raw and primal. He thought he could feel something tear inside him, not flesh, but spirit. The whisper returned, cruel and final. "You are already mine." The fog crashed in again, swallowing the stars, crushing the flicker of hope. June's strength bled out of him, his body limp as the roots dragged him deeper into the earth. His fingers clawed one last time at the gravel, leaving bloody streaks as the soil closed over his chest. Only his face remained visible, eyes wide, tears streaking down his dirt-smeared cheeks. His mouth opened to scream again, but the forest silenced him. The earth grew still, as if nothing had ever stirred it. June's final scream had already faded into the fog, his body swallowed by the lane's silent hunger. The mist shifted lazily, curling around the trees in familiar patterns. For a moment, it seemed over. But if one were to stand there, quiet, alone, in the thick of the night, they might notice something faint. A shadow beneath the crooked tree. A whisper that didn't belong to the wind. Sometimes it was Raziad's voice. Sometimes June's. Sometimes both, overlapping in a soft, desperate plea. "Help me." The sound was so subtle, so fleeting, that most would dismiss it as imagination. Yet travelers who dared to pass Kot Panglima swore they felt it, the weight of unseen eyes pressing against their backs, the prickle of fear urging them to ride faster. No one ever found June's bike. No one found his body. Only a helmet, cracked and stained, left like an offering at the roadside. And late at night, When another engine hums faintly in the distance, the mist seems to thicken, the branches bend lower, and the lane breathes in, expectant. Perhaps June is gone. Or perhaps he waits, trapped just beneath the gravel, ready to warn the next soul who wanders into Kot Panglima's grasp. And so, that was the chilling tale of the silent lane of Kot Panglima. A quiet road, a lone rider, and whispers that should never be heard. Now, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think really happened to June that night? Was it just fear playing tricks on him? Or was there truly something waiting in the shadows of Kot Panglima? Share your theory in the comments below, whether it's supernatural, psychological, or maybe even something you've personally experienced on a dark road. Your story might just inspire our next episode. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and most importantly, keep the lights on tonight. Because who knows, the next whisper might not come from the